While the golden wedding of Queen Regent Alyssa Velaryon and the Hand, Rogar Baratheon, was the most lavished and far-famed wedding of the year 49 AC, the third marriage that year would prove to be the most long-lasting and significant. With their own wedding now safely behind them, the Regent and the Hand next turned their attention to finding a suitable match for King Jaehaerys, a queen to rule by his side, and to a lesser extent, a match for his younger sister, Princess Alysanne, who could be used to secure a strong political alliance. So long as Jaehaerys remained unwed, and without an heir of his own body, the twin daughters of his sister, the widowed Queen Rhaena, would remain his heirs. But Aeria and Rhaena Targaryen were still young children, and it was felt by many, the Hand of the King in particular, they were strongly unfit for the crown. Moreover, Lord Rogar and Queen Alyssa both feared what might befall the realm should Rhaena return from the Westerlands to act as regent for her daughters. Though none dared to speak of it, it was plain that the discourse had arisen between the two queens, for the daughter had neither attended her mother's wedding nor invited her to her own. And there were some who went further and whispered that Rhaena was a sorceress who had used dark arts to murder Maegor upon the Iron Throne. Therefore it was incumbent upon King Jaehaerys to marry and father a son as soon as possible. The question of who the young king might marry was less easily resolved, and would cause much disagreement among the small council. Lord Rogar, who was known to harbour thoughts of extending the power of the Iron Throne across the Narrow Sea to Essos, put forward the notion of an alliance with Tyrosh by marrying Jaehaerys to the Archon's daughter, a comely girl of 15 years, who had charmed all at the golden wedding with her wits, her flirtatious manner, and her blue-green hair. In this, however, Rogar found himself opposed by his own wife, Queen Alyssa. The small folk of Westeros would never accept a foreign girl with dyed hair as their queen, she argued, no matter how delightful her accent. And the pious would oppose the girl bitterly, for it's known that in Tyrosh they keep not the seven, but worshipped gods like R'hllor, the pattern maker, three-headed Trios, and other queer and unknown gods. Her own preference was to look to the houses who had risen in support of Aegon the Uncrowned in the battle beneath the god's eye. Let Jaehaerys wed a Vance, a Corpore, a Westerling, or a Piper, she urged. Loyalty should be rewarded, and by making such a match the king would honour Aegon's memory and the valour of those who fought and died for him. It was Grand Maester Vermithor who spoke loudest against such a course, pointing out that the sincerity of their commitment to peace and reconciliation might be doubted if there was seen to be favour towards those who had fought for Aegon over those who had remained loyal to Maegor. A better choice, he felt, would be a daughter of one of the great houses that had taken little or no part in the battle between House Targaryen, a Tyrell, a Hightower, an Arryn. With the King's Hand, the Queen Regent and the Grand Maester so divided, other councillors felt emboldened to put forward their own candidates. Prentice Tully, the Royal Justiciar, nominated the young sister of his wife, Lucinda, famed for her piety. Such a choice would surely please the faith. Daemon Velaryon, the Lord Admiral, suggested Jaehaerys might marry the widowed Queen Eleanor of House Costane. How better to show Maegor's supporters that they had been forgiven by taking one of his black brides to wife, maybe even adopting their 3 sons by her first marriage. Queen Eleanor's proven fertility was another factor in her favour, he argued. Lord Celtigar had 2 unwed daughters, and had famously offered Maegor his choice of them. Now he offered the same girls again for Jaehaerys. Lord Baratheon would have none of it. I have seen your daughters, Rogar said to Celtigar. They have no chins, no teats, and no sense. The Queen Regent and her councillors discussed the question of the king's marriage time and time again, over a month, but came no closer to reaching an answer. Jaehaerys himself was not privy to these conversations. On this, Queen Alyssa and Lord Rogar agreed. Though Jaehaerys might be wise beyond his years, he was still a boy, and ruled a boy's desires that on no account could be allowed to overrule the good of the realm. Queen Alyssa in particular had no doubt whatsoever about whom his son would choose to marry, were the choice left solely to him. Her youngest daughter, his sister, Princess Alysanne. The Targaryens had been marrying brother to sister for centuries, dating back before the Doom of Valyria, and Jaehaerys and Alysanne had grown up almost expecting to wed, just as their elder siblings Aegon and Rhaena had wed. Moreover, Alysanne was only 2 years younger than her brother, and the two children had always been very close, with a strong affection and regard for one another. Their father, King Aenys, would certainly have wished for them to marry, and once that would have been their mother's wish as well. But the horrors she had witnessed since her husband's death had persuaded Queen Alyssa to think elsewise. Though the warriors' sons, the poor fellows, the militant arm of the faith had been disbanded and outlawed, many former members remained at large in the realm and might willingly take up their swords again, if provoked. The Queen Regent feared their wrath, and she had vivid memories of all that had befallen her son, Aegon and Viserys, and her daughter, Rhaena. "We dare not ride that road again," she's reported to have said more than once. In this resolve, she was supported by the newest member of the small council, Septon Matthias, of the most devout, who had remained in King's Landing when the High Septon and the rest of his brethren had returned to Old Town, a great whale of a man, and famed for his corpulence, as for the magnificence of his robes. Matthias claimed descent from the Gardener kings of old, who had once ruled the Reach from their seat at High Garden. Many regarded him as a near certainty to be chosen as the next High Septon. The present occupant of that holy high office, whom Septon Moon had derided as the High Lickspittle, was cautious and complacent, so there was little danger of any marriage being denounced from Old Town, so long as he continued to speak for the Seven from his seat in the Starry Sept. The father of the faithful was not a young man. The journey to King's Landing to officiate the Golden Wedding had almost killed him. "If it should fall to me to don his mantle, his grace of course would have my support in any choice he might make," Septon Matthias assured the Queen Regent and her advisers. "But not all my brethren are so inclined, and, dare I say, there are other Septon Moons out there. Given all that has occurred, to marry brother to sister at this juncture would be seen as a grievous affront to the pious, and I fear for what might happen." Their queen's misgivings thus confirmed, Rogar Baratheon and the other lords put aside all consideration of Princess Alysanne as a bride for her brother Jaehaerys. The princess was 13 years of age and had recently celebrated her first flowering, so it was thought desirable to see her wed as soon as possible. Though still far apart as regards to a suitable match for the king, the council swiftly settled on a match for the young princess. She would be married on the 7th day of the new year to Oren Baratheon, the youngest of Lord Rogar's brothers. Thus it was settled by Queen Regent and the Hand, and their Lord Councillors and advisers. But like many such arrangements throughout the ages, their plans were soon undone, for they had grievously underestimated the will and determination of Alysanne Targaryen herself and her young king Jaehaerys. No announcement had yet been made of Alysanne's betrothal, so it's not known how word of it reached her ears. Grand Maester Vermithor suspected a servant, for many such had come and gone while visiting the lords as they debated in the Queen's solar. Lord Rogar himself was suspicious of Daemon Velaryon, the Lord Admiral, a prideful man, who might well have believed that the Baratheons were overreaching themselves in hopes of displacing the Lord of the Tides as the second house in the realm. Years later, when these events had passed into legend, the small folk would tell each other of rats in the walls that had overheard the lords talking and rushed to the princess with the news. No record survived of what Alysanne Targaryen said or thought when she first learned that she was to be wed to a youth 10 years her senior, whom she scarcely knew, if rumours could be believed, did not even like. We only know what she did. Another girl might have wept or raged or run pleading to her mother. In many sad songs, maidens forced to wed against their will threw themselves from tall towers to their deaths. Princess Alysanne did none of these. Instead, she went directly to Jaehaerys. The young king was as displeased as his sister at the news. "They will be making my wedding plans for me as well, I have no doubt," he denounced at once. Like his sister, Jaehaerys did not waste time with reproaches, recriminations, or appeals. Instead, he acted decisively and swiftly. Summoning his Kingsguard, he instructed them to sail at once for Dragonstone, where he would meet them there shortly. "You have sworn me your swords and your obedience," he reminded his 7. "Remember those vows and speak no word of my departure." That night, under the cover of darkness, Jaehaerys and Alysanne mounted their dragons, Vermithor and Silverwing, and departed the Red Keep for the ancient Targaryen citadel below the Dragon Mount on Dragonstone. Reportedly, the first words the young king spoke upon landing were, "I have need of a septum." The king, rightly, had no trust in Septon Matthias, who would surely have betrayed their plans, but the sept on Dragonstone was tended by an old man named Oswyck, who had known Jaehaerys and Alysanne since their births, and instructed them in the mysteries of the Seven throughout their childhood. As a younger man, Septon Oswyck had ministered to King Aenys, and as a boy had served as a novice in the court of Queen Rhaenys. He was more than familiar with House Targaryen's tradition of sibling marriage, and when he had heard the king's command, he asserted at once. The Kingsguard arrived from King's Landing by galley a few days later. The following morning, as the sun rose, Jaehaerys Targaryen, the first of his name, took to wife his younger sister, Alysanne, in the great yard at Dragonstone, before the eyes of gods, men, and dragons. Septon Oswyck performed the marriage rites. Though the old man's voice was thin, no part of the ceremony was neglected. The 7 knights of the Kingsguard stood witness to the union, their white cloaks snapping in the wind. The castle garrison and servants looked on as well, together with a good part of the small folk of the fishing villages that huddled below the Dragon Mount's mighty curtain wall. A small and modest feast followed that ceremony, and many toasts were drunk to the health of the boy king and his new queen. Afterwards, Jaehaerys and Alysanne retired to the bedchamber, where Aegon the Conqueror had once slept beside his sisters, Rhaenys and Visenya. But in the view of the bride's youth, there was no bedding ceremony, and the marriage was not consummated. This omission would prove to be of great importance when Rogar Baratheon and Queen Alyssa arrived belatedly from King's Landing in a war galley, accompanied by a dozen knights, 40 men-at-arms, Septon Matthias, Grand Maester Bennifer, whose letters it is gives us most of the complete accounting of what transpired that day. It is said that Jaehaerys and Alysanne met them inside the castle gates, holding hands. It is said, furthermore, that Queen Alyssa wept when she saw them. "You foolish children," she said, "you know not what you have done." Then, Septon Matthias, his voice thunderous as he berated the king and queen, and prophesied that this abomination would once more plunge all of Westeros into war. "They shall curse your incest from the Dornish marches to the wall, and every pious son of the mother and father shall denounce you as sinners, as the sinners that you are." The Septon's great face grew red and swollen as he raved, Bennifer tells us, and spittle sprayed from his lips. Jaehaerys is rightly honoured in the annals of the 7 kingdoms for his calm demeanour and even temper. But let no man think that the fire of House Targaryen did not burn in his veins. He showed it that day. When the Septon finally paused for a breath, the king said, "I will accept chastisement from her grace my mother, but not from you. Hold your tongue, fat man. If another word passes your lips, I will have them sewn shut." Septon Matthias spoke no more. Lord Rogar was not so easily cowed. Blunt and to the point, he asked only one thing: if the marriage had been consummated. "Tell me true, your grace, was there a bedding? Did you claim her maidenhead?" "No," the king replied. "She is too young." At that, Lord Rogar smiled. "Good. You are not wed." He turned to the knights who had accompanied him from King's Landing. "Separate these children gently, if you please. Escort the princess to the Sea Dragon Tower, and keep her there. His grace shall accompany us back to the Red Keep." As his men took a step forward, the knights of Jaehaerys' Kingsguard stepped up and drew their swords. "Come no closer," warned Sir Giles Morrigan. "Any man who lays a hand upon our king and queen shall die here today." Lord Rogar was dismayed. "Sheath your steel and move aside," he commanded. "Have you forgotten I am the king's hand?" "Aye," old Sour Sam answered, "but we are the king's guard, not the hand's guard, and it's the lad who sits the chair, not you." Rogar Baratheon bristled at Sir Samgood's words and answered, "You are 7. I have 100 swords behind me. A word from me and they will cut you to pieces." "They might kill us," replied young Pate the Woodcock, brandishing his spear. "But you will be the first to die, my lord. You have my word upon that." What might have happened next no man can say. Had not Queen Alyssa chosen that moment to speak. "I have seen enough death," she said. "So have we all. Put away your swords, sirs. What is done, and now we must all need live with it. May the gods have mercy on the realm." She turned to her children. "We shall go in peace. Let no man speak of what happened here today." "As you command, mother." King Jaehaerys pulled his sister closer and put his arm around her. "But do not think ye shall unmake this marriage. We are one now, and neither gods nor men shall part us. Never," affirmed the bride. "Send me to the ends of the earth and wed me to the king of Mavosi, or the lords of the Grey Waste. Silverwing will always bring me back to Jaehaerys." And with that, she raised herself onto her toes and lifted her face to the king and kissed him full upon the lips, while all looked on.